Today I'm going to review some bread.
Live fast, die young, bad girls do it well. Live fast, die young, bad girls do it well.
Hey, your girl engaged and underage just colored her hair because you both have the same level of maturity.
Live fast, die young, bad girls do it well. Live fast, die young, bad.
That's good bread. Recipe courtesy of Fiona Goldman. Now I'm going to review this. This is called The Echo Maker and it's by Richard Powers. I just dropped my pen and the bread. I have been meaning to make this review for several months, and in fact I think I have made it twice, but I really want to do this book justice because I really like it, and it's quite important to me because I'm writing a 4,000 word extended essay on it before the end of the summer, hopefully, which is quite important to my final grade in school. So I don't want to sound stupid when I talk about it. It was written quite recently, I think it was published in 2006, and it follows three main characters. Mark Schluter, who has a car crash and gets a neurological disorder where he can recognise everyone, but he becomes slightly paranoid and he refuses to believe that his sister is his sister. He thinks she's an alien or an imposter or a robot or a spy or an actress or something like that. The other main character is his sister, Karen, who has to deal with this sudden isolation from the only family she has left. And then the other character is a psychologist called Weber, who is quite famous and is a successful author of psychological books and comes and investigates and tries to help Karen and Mark. It's a book with very big themes. It talks a lot about the environment and our abuse of it. The time it was written is very important. It's very much a post 9/11 novel, which normally is really off-putting for me, but I think it deals with it very well and very subtly. And it also touches on the direction which our society is heading in, I suppose, like with the presence of new media and the way things are developing, and Weber in particular feels very left behind by the modern world, probably because he's the oldest. One of the first things that struck me when I read this book is how beautiful and poetic the language is. Like, sometimes you read a novel and you assume that the author must be a poet or something as well, because the writing just feels that way. Cranes keep landing as night falls, ribbons of them roll down, slack against the sky. They float in from all compass points in kettles of a dozen, dropping with the dusk. It also has a very interesting structure. It's divided into 5 sections, and at the beginning of each section there is a chapter or a mini chapter that focuses particularly on cranes, which are central to the location of the novel. Among other things, the cranes add to the sort of the context of the novel, and there's one section which goes through loads of man-made mythology that surrounds the cranes and gives this backdrop of a huge time scale, because our relationship with the environment has changed so much in the past 200 years. Because the cranes are this ancient bird that have been around for millions of years, it provides this contrast of our relationship with the cranes, from the description of Crane wanting to marry a Native American woman to this sudden huge conflict where basically either the cranes survive or we do. But having said all that stuff about big important philosophical issues, it's also kind of a thriller, in that on the night that Karen visits Mark in the hospital for the first time, when he's all hooked up to wires and still unconscious from the accident, she finds a note on his bedside table. "I am no one, but tonight on North Line Road, God led me to you so you could live and bring back someone else." And basically the central question of the novel is, who left the note? What does it mean? When was it left there? How is that possible? And that is revealed. The anticipation is what keeps you reading the novel, as well as the interesting themes and messages. Richard Powers isn't as one-sided as it would be easy to be with this. He has characters that represent different extremes, the extremes of environmental protection and the extremes of environmental destruction, and both have their persuasive arguments. It's not a simple book to read, unless you want it to be, in which case you can just read it as a thriller and enjoy the chase, as it were. I suppose some bad points. There are lots of long words, which may sound silly, but I like to think of myself as having an adequate vocabulary for most books, and there were lots of words in this book that I had to look up, to the extent where, you see one word, you don't know what it means, and you're like, forget it, and then you're like, wait, okay, I've seen about 5 words in this chapter I've never heard before in my life, I'm gonna need to get a dictionary to understand this book. And another thing is it's quite long. It's about 600 pages, I think, which, when I was reading it, I didn't want it to end, I wanted it to be longer. On reflection, as I read through it again, like second and third and fourth times, maybe it could have done with being shorter. There are times when I think Richard Powers is just prolonging it, but I loved it when I was reading it and I didn't want it to be any shorter. Geez, Jake and Simon, it's been ages since you made a video here, and it's not good enough, and I'm sick of it, so, you know, pick up the pace.